How do you come home back to you? That's what we're talking about in today's podcast episode. Welcome back to Happiness Happens. My name is Simona Costantini, and today we have a conversation that is absolutely going to just make you feel so inspired, so excited, so aligned, and so tuned in to your purpose, your potential, and all you're meant to be doing here on this earth. I have an absolutely incredible guest with me today. Her name is Randi Halaway, and she is a self-love and business coach for women who are ready to step into their highest level of mastery and claim more freedom, more abundance, and more fulfillment in their lives. What I loved about this conversation is how many different pieces we connected on. One of those pieces was ending marriages and restarting life all over again and really coming back home to yourself. So, in this podcast episode, we dive into a little bit of her entrepreneurial journey since 2001. And we talk about the different experiences that have helped her shape who she is today. She also has had a 17-year career as a hairstylist, which we talk about, owning and managing a salon in downtown San Diego for over 5 years. And she sold it in 2017. Since 2016, she's been coaching and supporting women just like you to create and implement key strategies and organization within their businesses and their lives. She's here to help you remember who you truly are by breaking through the limiting beliefs and the blocks that keep us playing small. And she's also, especially in this episode, going to help us reclaim our own power. She's on a mission to help you love yourself fully. I also want to share with you a workshop that she is hosting on March 18th, which is a Monday. All of the details are in the notes below, so be sure to go check that out to sign up, and I will see you there. We talk a little bit about it in the episode as well, and it's going to be a super powerful event. So I think you should definitely attend, especially if you're listening to this conversation and you love where we went with it. Thanks so much for tuning in to our conversation today. Be sure to connect with us, rate and review the show if you love what you heard. I want to hear what you think of the podcast. I want to hear what you think about this episode. So without further ado, let's get into our conversation with Randi. Randi, welcome to Happiness Happens. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
We're going to have such a fun conversation today. I have so many thoughts for you, so many questions for you. And I want to first start off with a question that I've been asking every single guest when they come on the show. And it is, what does happiness mean to you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think at the core, it means really being present with self and connecting to the inner peace and freedom that we all have access to within inside of us. Because I believe that, everything that's happening in our outer world is ultimately a reflection of our inner world. And so the more we connect to that inner peace, love, freedom, that's where the true happiness ultimately stems from. And then everything else gets to be a reflection of that.
Beautiful, beautiful. I agree with you. And I feel like sometimes it can be a little bit, life outside of your own self can be very chaotic, right? And I think a lot of the times I'm just going to say a general we, and I don't mean this for every single person because it won't be true for every single person, but sometimes it's really easy to get outside of your own self and to live in like everybody else's stuff. How do you balance the notion and the idea of living with an open heart while also making sure you're not taking in things that are not meant for your highest good? Like, I struggle with this every day.
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. And I know a lot of people that I work with, we talk about this often. And, the honest answer is I have to work on it too. And so for me, it's a daily practice. So a big part of what I believe and what I teach is to learn how to make yourself a priority and have practices that you do daily to help ground you, regulate your nervous system, connect you to, into your body, into your heart, be aware of what's going on in your outer world, and sort of letting go of what's not yours and protecting your energy so that when you go into the world as a sovereign being, it's like, and now you're present, you're set up for success. Now I go into the world and it's like, okay, yes, I want to go in as open as possible so that I can receive all the magic that's available for me, but also so that I can share my heart with as many people and my love with as many people as possible, right? But to your point, sometimes if we go in super open or we're not being intentional or we haven't protected our energy or we don't have boundaries or any of that stuff, it can like kind of take us down, especially if we're sensitive or empathic or things like that. So what I practice is learning how to be regulated, go into your day grounded, intentional and aware, so that as I'm going into my day, whatever is coming in, if I feel something like, whoa, that's intense, I can immediately recognize it if it's not for me and let it go, surrender it back with love and come back to my sovereignty. Because in reality, I believe from a universal law standpoint, we're not meant to take on other people's stuff. Like it's not actually our responsibility. And so when you just recognize that, it's so powerful because it actually will just release. And then you come back to your power. And then ultimately, as a kind of a side tab to this, I think this is how we can ultimately actually hold space for people that we love and that we're showing up, we want to show up for, versus like taking on their stuff. Because if I take on your stuff, if you're having a bad day, I come in and I take on your stuff, now we're both in pain and we're both going to be kind of spiraling. So the idea is like, how can I have that energetic boundary, but with an open heart to actually hold space for you or whatever might be going on. And then I get to decide like what's in my highest to let in more or to release back. So
I love that.
hopefully that made sense.
It makes so much sense. My brain is firing in like 100 different ways because I'm like, okay, we could talk about this path of nervous system regulation, which I feel like is a very big core part of the boundaries you either have or you don't have, right? When it comes to other people. And one thing that I find, and maybe this is a little bit common for people who don't, or people who are not great at doing this yet, which I would put myself in that category of, I just want to make sure that everyone is happy and that everyone is good. And I end up overextending my own self to please other people. So that notion of, you are a people pleaser and like whatever. I like to say I'm recovering because it's not as bad as it used to be.
Yes.
But that said, in my mind, I'm like, okay, in order to release something that is no longer mine, I feel like I need to be like in a meditation circle or getting Reiki, or like I need to be journaling, or I need to do something. Like, how do you begin to flip that narrative in your mind and immediately start to release something without having to go and do, I mean, like all of those other things are things that you probably should be doing in your life on a regular basis anyways.
Mm-hmm.
But how do you start to just make that shift in your mind and be like, I release?
Yeah. So that's a really, really great and multifaceted question.
Right?
And so, the first piece is what I would say is it's understanding that we have an ego. We have this part of our mind that is hardwired to protect us and what keeps us ultimately in chaos. This is where people pleasing comes from. Now, the mind's going to convince you, like, I'm a people pleaser. I'm a really good person. I just like to give. I'm such a good person. And of course, you are. People who like to give, yes, we have huge hearts. I'm very similar. But there's also an underlying ego-based pattern of like, ooh, I need to give to you all day long so that you will validate me. Once you understand that how the ego works and that it's creating these dynamics, it's creating, I hear this all the time, like, you don't understand. I've got kids, I've got work, I've got a husband, I've got these, everyone needs me. I'm like, okay, great. And where is that coming from? Where I'm just, okay, cool. So the whole concept here is that I'm just going to sacrifice myself fully because everyone needs me. Like, where is that really coming from? When you understand that that's an ego-based pattern, and that if you really were to take the time to get more into your body, more into your heart, more into your intuition, your truth, it's like, wait a second. Yeah, of course I'm a giver. Of course I want to help people. But if I don't take care of me first, it's kind of like the airplane analogy. They say it so clearly. If you don't have your mask on, how in the world are you meant to be helping other people? And so even for people who bend over backwards and do this stuff, it's like you're helping, let's say 50 people in a day, but what kind of help are they getting? Are they getting the highest version of you, or are they getting a little breadcrumb from you? What would it be like if we recognized the mind was at play, slowed it down? And this is where, I guess, like I said, it's multifaceted. This is where having practices are really important, because you have to learn how to manage and navigate this. And the only way you're going to be able to get to what you said, how do you do it in the moment, is you have to recognize this is happening first, that there's an ego at play, and then you've got your heart over here. You have to get to a place in life where you're like, I'm ready for change. And then you have to start making yourself a priority by doing these practices, which ultimately get you into your body. They help you relax. They help you regulate. They help you remember, like, oh yeah, I don't have to sacrifice myself. I'm already enough within inside of myself. And then now, the more you practice that, when you're in the world, you just start to recognize it because you're more connected to your true self. You're more connected to your intuition. And you can recognize, like, oh, wait, I'm taking this on right now. Or wait, I'm sacrificing myself. And really, to what you said earlier, all of those things are really important, like circles, meditation, journaling. Those are things that I teach all the time. But I would ask, when you're saying I can only do it in those places, like, where is that coming from? Is that coming from your head, or is that coming from your power? Because when you're really in your power, you can do anything you want at any time you want. So that's how you do it. Again, it's a multifaceted question and answer, but that's like the simplicity of it when you really kind of drop in there.
I love that. And one thing too that I was thinking about when we were chatting before this interview and we were sort of deciding, like, what do we want to talk about? Like, how are we going to
Mm-hmm.
frame? And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, we could go in any direction with these topics
Mm-hmm.
because they are so multifaceted.
Yeah.
And I think that in the work that I've done on my own self and through so many conversations that I've had on the podcast, one thing that comes to mind is a lot of these tendencies that we have, and I say we as a general we, as like if you
Yes.
relate to me in this type of situation, because this might not resonate for somebody else, and that's totally fine.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of that comes from control and like the lack of control in, even though everything on the surface can look like it's going totally fine, the back end effect that that has on our nervous system, our money, our families, our relationships, like that is so intertwined. And I would love your thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, that's also a really great point on how it's like the way that the mind works of like trying to convince us that, like, again, like sort of all these outward things are, more important than these inner things, right? As we're like navigating our life and like what's coming up. And so the idea here is control is an illusion created by the ego. If you take a second to pause and zoom out and sort of like look at even just like the world and human nature, there's very little things that we have control over. Now, as humans, we try to control. And this is what causes stress, is we try to do something that like isn't really attainable. We're not really meant to be in control of everything that's happening. What we do have control over is how we choose to respond or react to whatever is happening in our life. And true happiness actually comes from the ability to be able to recognize, like, okay, life comes with challenge. Life comes with uncertainty. Life comes with the feeling of out of control. What am I going to do about it? Am I going to respond and have more flow and ease and grace and happiness? Or am I going to react? And that's what creates the stress and all that, and this illusion that I'm out of control, so I need to grab onto control. And so that's where we start to spin and cycle in this idea when if you really look at it, it's all an illusion. So the idea is, again, the more you slow down, the more you start to make yourself a priority, the more you regulate and get into your body, connect to your heart, your intuition, you remember there's nothing actually to control other than how you choose to show up. And yes, you get to decide, like, do I want to go left or right today? Do I want to be an entrepreneur? Do I want to get a job? Do I want to marry this person? Do I want to not? Of course. But the rest of it is all sort of just happening. And so what we want to be doing is learning how to navigate. Learning how to navigate the uncomfort of being out of control, the uncomfort of the unknown, all those types of things. And that's really our freedom.
I agree with all of this. And I really, really like that you went there. And what does it feel like to live in a place that is this just deep connection to self? Like, if you could describe that feeling to someone, what does that feel like?
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because I actually feel like some emotion coming through, because this has been a journey I've been on for like a really long time. And I've gotten to this place, and I will preface by saying I still have a long way to go. I'm a work in progress, but I've gotten to this place where I would say it's just freedom within that I didn't even know honestly was possible. And that's the best way I can describe it, is like the more you let go of the outer results, the outward validation, the more you choose to go inward and look at your trauma, look at your challenges, look at your patterns, learn how to catch how the ego works, and ultimately go inward and start to learn how to feel. Because that's really what's going on, is we're afraid of feeling. And the ego's creating all these reasons why we don't have time to do that. When you do that, you come into this place of what I like to call remembrance of true self. remembrance of who you really are. And what I mean by that is that, again, from the ego, we're getting up. It's like, I need to create safety. I need to create love. I need to create a validation. I need to create security. I need. In reality, you're already loved. You're already safe. You're already secure. You're already enough. You're already worthy. There's nothing else you need to do in your outer world. Now, we're human, so of course we want to accomplish things and do that. There's nothing wrong with that. But the real freedom, and going into like what you just asked me and why it feels so powerful and even like emotional for me, is because when you really get to this place when you're like, wow, it really does exist within, and I don't need to prove. I mean, you can kind of just imagine the weight that gets lifted off of one's shoulders and the freedom that you might feel if you could just wake up and be you, knowing that, yes, you're going to have challenges, you're going to fall, you're going to mess up, but you're just going to get back up and come back to like, wait, but I'm already whole. I'm already loved. I'm already enough. So whatever's going on in this outer situation, I'm just going to navigate it the best I can. And then I'm going to let it be. And that's how we open up ultimately to that more inner freedom and peace. But also that's how we open ourselves up to like magic, miracles, infinite possibilities that are available to each and every one of us.
I love that. And what I'm hearing in this too is it's this like deep transformation with the self-worth that you have for yourself. And that is, well, self-worth you have for yourself, of course. And that is something that can take, months for some people, but also years for other people. And for others, you don't even realize that that's how you've been living for, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And then you wake up and you're like, oh my goodness. And so it's interesting because I'm 32 and I've never realized how deeply my desire for acceptance from others was until I decided to completely overhaul and 180 shift my life and leave a marriage that felt like it was no longer serving and like all of the things that come with that. And I just wanted someone to validate my decisions. I just wanted someone to be like, Simona, you made the right choice. And I think I had maybe like 2 friends that were like, babe, if this feels good for you, that's all that matters. But I so deeply wanted like, the friends that I've had for a long, long time and my family members to just be like, we support you. And no matter what you're going to do in your life, like that's all I wanted. And then it took me probably about a year to realize that that's just not always the case. And people understand what you go through in life by their own awareness and what they've been through. And so it's like also this whole layer of understanding the projections that people put onto you, how they come from their own past experiences that are not necessarily true for you.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think this is a really good point too. So there's like a few facets to this too. So you've got people and what they've got going on. People are projecting what's going on with inside of them. Right. So you just want to be really aware of that when you're taking advice from someone, when they are giving you advice, when they're not giving you advice, when they're, whatever it is that they're doing, like most likely they're projecting something inside of them unless they have become skilled at, like I said, legitimately holding space, meaning it's not about them. It's really about you.
Yeah.
So that's the first piece.
You gotta be careful with that though, because that can be, people can trick you with that.
Yes, that's true too. Yeah, absolutely. And this is why, going back to my original point of learning how to trust yourself, because like at the end of the day, you want your intuition to, that's your greatest skill set, to know like who is, authentic, who isn't, all those things. So, but going back to what you said about the outward validation. So what I want to say to that is that as a human being, it's okay to desire validation. It's okay to desire support, especially when you're going through something like that. But here's what I'll say. Again, not everyone's able to do it. And secondly, at the end of the day, if you want it to really integrate, it has to come from you. So it's multifaceted. If you really want the true deep validation when you're to get to like ultimate peace with something, it's got to come here. Caveat, it's also okay and natural as human beings to receive support from friends or a coach or a mentor or something like that to support you in getting to that place. Which I think that has more to do with like, the dance between this idea of like being, sovereign and taking care of you, and also understanding that we're wired for connection. We're wired for those types of things too. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's a beautiful thing. It's just maybe the next question is like, where are you looking for those things? Are you going Because the thing is, if you're really deficient in doing it for yourself, you're most likely going to go to people that just don't have the capacity to do it. They just don't have it. They might love you, but they don't have it. They can't do it. They're like, I cannot support your divorce because I can't deal with the fact that I need to get divorced, kind of a thing,
Right.
right? So it's
Exactly.
like, we're just not going to talk about this. I'm going to run away from you every time you come near me because I can't look at myself, right?
Like, you're triggering me. Thanks.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what's going on there. So, but going back to like the deeper point is like, the more you give it to yourself, remember it's all a reflection, like I said at the beginning. So the more I show up for me, the more I validate me, what I've noticed is and I have chills, is I just attract more people who naturally want to show up, want to validate, want to support. And it's so beautiful. And because I'm doing it for myself, I'm able to receive it, but not because I need it to survive, because I already know I've got me, because it just now gets to be extra. It's like we talk about, like the icing on the cake.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. And
Yeah.
what's interesting too, this kind of comes back to the idea of being and knowing you are meant to be who you truly are.
Mm-hmm.
How would you describe that for someone? What does that like mean, being who you truly are?
I think it's also a very big question and
I know.
could be
All
different
of
for
these could be
different
their
people.
own podcast
Yeah.
episodes. Like,
No, yeah, I know. We'll have to do this again.
we will have to do this again.
um, I think it's a big question and it's unique to different people. But I think if we're going to go to the deepest core of the question, it's being your authentic self, whatever that is for you, right? And what I believe is my authentic self has more to do with sort of summing up everything we just talked about, really doing my work of letting go of past trauma. I have a lot of trauma from my childhood. I've also been married and divorced actually twice. My second marriage only lasted for 4 months. So I've been through a lot of different things in my life. So my work has been to really look at that and understand that, we have the choice in every moment. Am I a victim from these things that happened, or am I a victor and I'm going to take responsibility for my role? And when you're doing that work, and you're managing your thoughts, you're managing your limiting beliefs, and you're allowing yourself to actually feel the uncomfort of loss, the rejection, the fear, the feeling of alone. What happens is you actually, like I said, come back into this more, we'll call it high self, true self, authentic self, that is like, wait a second, there's no real problems here. Now, of course, if there's an actual problem going on in your life, you're being attacked or something's going on, then yes, go manage that. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about in a day-to-day where our mind wants to seem like the world is ending. It's like when you come back to this place, it's like, wait, the world is not ending. I am safe. There's no external threats here. And oh yeah, like again, I'm already safe. I'm already loved. I'm already enough. And like, wow, am I powerful beyond measure? Because when you really start to remember who you are and you remember how powerful you are, that's when you're like, okay, now I'm connecting to who I really am. Because we're all radiant, magnificent, powerful beings that ultimately have access to infinite possibilities. That's our true self. That's who we really are at the core. And then, of course, we all have unique things that come off of that. So if you're not feeling that way, then that just tells me that, the ego is still at play, and that's okay. We're human. As long as you're on this planet, in this earth school, you're going to have an ego. So what I would recommend is learn how to navigate your ego. Learn how to navigate your trauma, your challenges, your emotions. And so you can step more into your authentic self, more into your heart. And now you get to have more authentic and heart-based results in your life.
That's beautiful. Would you say that ego and trauma are coexistent? Like typically, if you have more trauma, potentially you would have a higher ego? Or is that not a fair statement to make?
I think it's fair in the sense that, so remember, the ego is hardwired to protect us. So the trauma, because even when you have trauma, it's like the ego doesn't understand the difference between trauma that happens when you're 3 and like getting cut off in traffic when you're 30. So if you're watching people have really intense reactions to traffic, or even like someone on a dating app not responding or not getting as many likes on Instagram, these types of things, understand that the ego does not know the difference between trauma that happened, like real intense trauma that happened when you were younger or in your life, than now. So the ego is hardwired to protect you from feeling uncomfortable. So I would say it's probably safe to say if you have more trauma that's unhealed, we all have trauma, to be clear, then yeah, you're probably going to have more ego that's coming in to basically just do its job. And so what I like to do is actually teach people, like, this isn't about making the ego go away. This is actually about learning how to befriend the ego, but lead it from a more heart-centered place. So it's like, oh, ego, I see what you're doing here. You're trying to create this reaction to this thing that happened because of what happened before. But, thank you for trying to protect me. But you know what? That's not happening anymore. We're safe. You can go sit down. I'll take it from here. And then I give myself that space to actually, but what am I feeling right now? I'm actually feeling really rejected because this person didn't respond to me. That's okay. It's a human emotion. It doesn't have any meaning. And once I take the meaning away from it, now I'm free. And now I'm back in my power. And I'm like, oh yeah, like everything's good. Like if someone's not responding or showing up or they're leaving, it's just because they're not meant to be. None of it's personal. And like, once again, now you're free. So these are all things that are like continually freeing you from basically giving meaning to whatever's happening in the outer world. Because going back, circling it back, we can't control the outer world. We can't control if someone's going to respond, if they want to stay with you, if they don't want to stay with you, if they want to work with you, if they don't want to work with you. That's not our choice. We can respond if we can control if we're taking it personal, and we can control if we're giving it meaning. And if we let go of taking it personal, we let go of the meaning, we feel our feelings, we get back into our power and we trust, now we're free. It's like, okay, cool, thanks, high five. On to the next.
Interesting. And you know what's coming up for me right now is this idea that, like, in a perfect world, I would love, you know what I mean, to be able to show up like that every single day and every single moment. But what I find happens, and perhaps this is just because I still have things that I need to learn when it comes to this specifically, I find that when I step into my power and make a decision and stick with it, obviously it makes people uncomfortable because people are not used to that from me, right? And then also,
Yet they're not used to it yet.
yet, exactly. And then
Yeah.
also, I feel guilty. I feel bad. Like I feel like I'm doing the wrong thing by doing what feels right for me because it
Yeah.
feels wrong to somebody else. Where do you go from there?
Yeah. So, and I'm glad you brought that up too, because I can imagine your listeners would relate to that, and I have myself as well. So remember, it's all about the work in light of looking at the trauma. So you have like a few things that happen here. You recognize that you needed to create a boundary. You got into your power. You made the choice, which was a huge victory. And you got to celebrate these things because this is a journey. This is a lifestyle. Like as long as you're human, as long as you're breathing, this is what we get to navigate. This isn't about being in that place 24/7. It's about being in it as often as you can. So let yourself off the hook for that expectation. It's also an ego-based expectation. Oh, so you're not going to live in your heart 24/7 like you're a failure. It's like, well, that was never realistic anyway. So thank you. Go sit down. Right. So the idea is to be able to catch that. And it's like that's what I'm saying. It's like it's a constant like cycle of like catching the mind and bring it back to the heart, catching the mind and bring it back to the heart. And then recognizing, so you got in your power, you made the choice, and you're feeling empowered and you're like, yay, I made the choice. And then all of a sudden you get a reaction from someone just based on what's going on with them. And now you're triggered again. And that's just an old pattern. Oh, I should feel guilty. I did it wrong. And now you go back in and cycle into navigating. And that's why I call this work a lifestyle. It's not something that goes away after like a 3-month program or just having this one conversation. Like if you're listening to this and it's resonating with you and it's planting a seed, or maybe you've been doing this and it's resonating with you more, just know that like you're on your own journey, your own process of creating this as a lifestyle. When you accept this work as a lifestyle, again, you're free because now it's like, oh, I just got triggered again. What do I need? Okay, cool, move on. Oh, I got my power. Oh, and that triggered me. Okay, what do I need? Move on. And so now you're actually just navigating. It becomes like you wake up, you brush your teeth, you manage a trigger, you go have breakfast, you manage a trigger, you go stop at a stop sign, you manage a trigger, and it becomes part of your lifestyle, like you would do laundry or take a shower. And so now it's not as big of a deal. So there doesn't have to be so much of the judgment and the, oh my God, people will say, can you believe that this happened again? And I'm like, I 100% can believe it. I totally believe it because you're human and this is what we signed up for. And so it's again just like letting go of the pressure and the expectation, like this idea that we're supposed to be perfect. Like, what does that even mean? There's not really a real definition for perfect anyway. And so the more we can release that and be like, okay, I stepped into my power, yay, celebrate that. Because we only have the present moment anyway. So celebrate that present moment. And then if it lasts for a minute, if it lasts for 5 days, great. But the second you get triggered again, okay, cool, we're back to work. I feel guilty. I feel shame. Something's going on. Let me talk through it. Let me like do that deeper work.
I love that. And I want to segue into something that you're hosting, which I think is really important. And I also, too, before I go there, I do want to say to my listeners that even though the story that I'm like sharing today, or whatever, like feels like it happens to me on a daily basis. I would also like for you to know that by doing this work, I don't have that response all the time anymore. So something will happen in my life
Yes.
and I'm like, ooh. And then I'm like, no, I actually don't choose that. Like, I'm not choosing this thought. I'm not choosing this pattern
Yeah.
again. And quite frankly, I don't really care. If someone has a judgment or an opinion on my life, I'm like, I don't care because I have got me at the end of the day. And so I just want you
Absolutely.
all to know that like this stuff actually does work. And by that, I would love, Randi, if you could share about the masterclass that you are hosting. It is coming up very soon. If you're listening to this, it's actually happening next week. And the link for that is going to be in the notes. So
Yeah.
please share a little bit about that.
Yeah, thank you so much. So, this workshop I'm leading is called Back to You. It's the art of mastering a heart-centered life. So basically, obviously we covered a lot in this short
We're
amount of
pretty
time
efficient,
today.
huh?
There's so much. Yeah, we did. We really dove in. There's a lot to this work. Again, this is a lifestyle. So this workshop will be a beautiful start, a beautiful integration. Wherever you are in your journey, it'll be a beautiful reminder of really learning how to come back to your heart. There's so much change happening in the world right now. There's a lot of unknowns. So I'm going to talk about learning how to navigate change and create more from your heart, trust your intuition. I'm going to talk about a really powerful self-care ritual that I practice daily, that I teach to my one-on-one clients and in my membership. That's really, really impactful. And I'm going to talk about learning how to manifest with intention, like more from your heart. If you're trying to manifest or create in your life and you're wondering why it's not working, my first question would be, where are you creating from? Are you doing it from your mind and the part of you that thinks you have to do something? Or have you taken that time to fall into your body, fall into your heart so that you can create from that place? Because that's the game changer. So I'm going to kind of take you through a process of that. Like I said, it's completely free. It's a 90-minute experience. And we have like a lot of fun on the call too. I do like fun prizes and we laugh, and it's a really, really just beautiful time
That's
together.
beautiful.
And it's on Zoom.
Perfect. I will
Yeah.
have the link to that in the show notes. I would love to attend. This sounds so amazing. So I will be there. Love
Yes,
this.
girl. Love that.
Absolutely. And before I ask you my last question, I would love if you could just share with my listener where they can find you so they can connect with you. No, it will be in the show notes below, but just in case they're already opening up their social media.
Absolutely. So my name is Randi Halaway. And so basically anything across the board, Instagram, Facebook, website is just at Randi Halaway, Randi, Halaway, Halaway. I have a unique first and last name, so my whole life I've been spelling my name, spelling my name for people. But yeah, it's at Randi Halaway on Instagram and then randyhalaway.com. Feel free to send me a DM or randy@randyhalaway.com for email or an email. I'm happy to answer any questions if anything's coming up for you, or if you're also not able to make the live event, register anyway. We send you a replay. So
That's perfect. And I feel you
yeah.
on the spelling of the name. My last name is Costantini and everyone always gets it wrong. And I'm like, I just like, okay, like it's fine. We're just gonna go by Simona. That's
Yeah.
fine. Randi, this is my last question for you. And it's a question that I've been asking for quite a few years now, actually. I ask every single guest when they come on the show, what is one way my listener can create a little more happiness in their day, every day, starting today?
Yeah, I would say, start to make yourself a priority. I'm going to come back to the simplicity of this. Wake up, breathe for 5 minutes, journal for 5 minutes, meditate for 5 minutes, go on a walk, reflect, look at yourself in the mirror, say some affirmations, do something for you to connect back to you. Because again, the mind wants to make this complicated, but from divine's perspective, this is all really simple. When you connect back to you, which is, why my workshop is called Back to You, because there's so much power in that. That's where your true happiness is. When you're back to you and you're back in your body, you're present. And remember, happiness can only exist in the present moment. It cannot exist in the past and it cannot exist in the future because those things have not happened. And so our real work is learning how to become present, because that is where happiness exists. And I know that from personal experience for myself and, teaching hundreds of people this. And it's so simple, but probably the most important and productive practice you will ever do, because it will bring you back to, again, what people want, which is ultimately to be
I love
happy.
that. Beautiful. Randy, thank you
Yeah,
so much for being here today. I
of
love this.
course. Thank you so much for
You're
having
so
me.
welcome. And thank you so much for tuning
It was
in to
amazing.
today's episode on Happiness Happens.
Yes.
If you loved our conversation, please connect with us. Be sure to attend Randy's workshop. It's going to be super amazing. All of the links for everything you need are in the show notes below. Again, thank you so much for being here. I hope you have a beautiful week ahead. And remember that happiness happens when you're least expecting it.